Hi everyone. In today's session, we are going to explore one of the most interesting and simplest forms of business organization, the sole proprietorship. Before we jump into its features, merits, and limitations, let's take a quick moment to understand what we really mean by the term form of business organization. When we talk about forms of business organization, we are basically asking who owns a business and who controls it. You see, every business needs someone to take charge, someone who owns it, runs it, and is responsible for its success or failure. Now, this idea of ownership is not just about money, it is actually a legal concept. It tells us who has the authority to make decisions and who is answerable for them. For example, think about this. If one person starts a small shop, that person alone takes every decision and also faces all the risks. But when two or more people join hands, we call it a partnership, and now both share authority and responsibility. And when we look at a company's Tata Motors, their ownership is divided among thousands of shareholders, but control is in the hands of directors and managers. So, the structure of ownership decides how the business operates, who is in charge, and who is responsible for what. That's, that's what gives the business its legal structure, the official identity by which others recognize it. For example, a company like Tata Motors Limited has its own legal entity, separate from its owners. But a small grocery shop run by one person doesn't. The owner and the business are considered the same. In short, the form of business organization depends on how ownership, control, and legal recognition come together, and that decides how a business is created, managed, and seen in the eyes of law and society. All right, now let's talk about the sole proprietorship. Probably the oldest and simplest form of business that still exists everywhere around us. Think of your neighborhood kirana shop run by just one person. That's a classic example. In simple words, a sole proprietorship is a one man business. One person invests the money, uses own skill, effort, and enjoys all the profits, but also bears all the risks. As J.L. Hansen said, it's a type of business where one person is solely responsible for providing the capital, managing everything, and bearing the risk. And remember, in this form, there is no legal difference between the business and the owner. They are treated as one and the same. Let's look at the key features. And to make it easy, let's go back to our Kirana shop example. First, one man ownership. The entire shop belongs to one individual. He invests his own money or maybe borrows a little, but he alone owns it. Second, no separation between ownership and management. The same person buys stock, arranges the goods, handles customers, keeps accounts, everything. This gives him full control and quick decision making, but it also means everything depends on him. Third, no separate legal entity. The shop and its owner are one in the eyes of the law. So, if the business faces losses or debts, the owner's personal assets might be used to pay them off. Next, he enjoys all profits. Whatever the shop earns is his income. But with that comes individual risk. If there is a loss, he alone bears it. Also, there is unlimited liability. His responsibility is not limited to what he invested. If he owns money, he may even have to sell personal assets to pay it off. And finally, very few legal formalities. Starting such a business is super easy. Just get the basic licenses and begin. That's why it is the most popular form for small businesses. Now let's talk about what makes this form so appealing, its merits. We will again use Kirana shop to understand. Easy formation. It's simple to start, no complicated procedures, no big paperwork. But the flip side, limited resources because the owner depends only on personal savings or small loans. Direct motivation, all profits go to the owner in case of sole proprietorship. So naturally, he is motivated to work hard. But again, there is limited managerial ability. One person cannot be an expert in everything. Full control. Yes, in sole proprietorship, he doesn't need anyone's approval to make decisions. But that also means it's unsuitable for larger scale operations. Because in case of large businesses, one person cannot handle everything as the business grows. Quick decisions. Since he is the only decision maker, but remember, there is unlimited liability. If things go wrong, his personal assets are at risk. Flexibility in operations. He can change his products, working hours, or prices anytime. However, the limitation is less stability. If he falls sick or stops working, the business might close down. Business secrecy. Since he alone manages the accounts, everything stays confidential. But this means no external checks because mistakes can go unnoticed. Personal touch with customers. This is a big advantage. In sole proprietorship, the owner knows his customers personally, remember their preferences, and builds strong trust. That personal relationship often brings loyalty and repeat business. However, the matching limitation is limited economies of scale because the business is small, he cannot buy in bulk or get the same discounts large businesses enjoy. His costs remain higher and profits comparatively lower. Easy dissolution. If he wants to close the business, he can do so easily, no long legal steps. But on the other side, continuity is uncertain. If he retires or passes away, the business might end. To wrap up, a sole proprietorship is the simplest, most flexible form of business. It gives full control, quick decisions, secrecy, and a personal touch. But it also has limited capital, unlimited liability, and uncertain continuity. That is why it is perfect for small shops, traders, and vendors, people who prefer independence and personal contact over large scale growth. And that brings us to the end of our discussion on sole proprietorship.